Welcome to Qatar KickAround, the nightly wrap-up and discussion of the day's action in the 2022 World Cup. From the group stage to the final, our team is here, keeping you on top of the world's most watched sporting event. Brought to you by Westwood One Sports.
Howdy-ho, and welcome to Matchday 2 of Qatar KickAround, our daily wrap-up show of the action taking place in the 2022 World Cup. Don't forget, you can listen to this as a podcast on demand, or you can watch it live streamed, and all of that stuff can be found on our website, thekickaround.com. Hi, it's me, Peter, tagging along with the walking encyclopedia and trivia know-it-all of all things World Cup and the world's most interesting man, Andy Swift.
Peter, day 2. How you feeling?
Day 2.
How's your bracket looking?
I'm feeling... Oh, my bracket is not looking at all. And you know him, you love him. It is our noted football journalist and good friend, live from London, Lars Darth Sivertson.
What would be my Sith name? That's one for the listeners to figure out.
Are you a watcher of Andor, Lars?
I am, actually. I haven't seen the finale tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah. Andy, are you watching Andor?
I am not.
I have. I'm working under the theory that Cyril's mom will eventually become a Sith Lord. That's just.
Well, I don't want to be that guy, but part of the reason why I'm liking Andor so much so far is that there's none of that nonsense. It's they're not. I know we're not a film criticism podcast, but I want to get it off my chest. It's a show that's not trying hard to be a Star Wars show. It's just trying to be a good show that happens to be set in the Star Wars universe, and that is why it's good. It
has this really crazy Michael Mann vibe, and there's an AMC show that was awesome called Rubicon back several years ago, and it reminds me of Rubicon. But anyway, nobody tuned in to Qatar KickAround to hear Andor discussion, so we'll quickly move away from that. Before we get into today's action, I just want to tell you guys, this will come as a surprise to neither of you. I rewatched the U.S. game.
Did you know?
And
because there's not enough football on at the moment. Like, it's really hard to find some good soccer right now.
Some things were bothering me, Mr. Lars, and I went away from the game yesterday watching it being kind of frustrated or disappointed. I left watching the game yesterday just flat out angry. Because there were a lot of things that I didn't pick up on, or there was actually one whole part of rewatching the game that I had forgotten to talk about on this, which was how frustrated I was by Pulisic in particular, and how all of my original fears when he got his gig at Chelsea that he'd turn into the American Messi, the superstar that just can't make it happen for his national team, is starting to come true.
I mean, I think Chelsea fans would be very excited if that analogy was very accurate. I mean, he's not. I understand what you're saying. I do. But I just think his development has been hampered by injury and not playing regularly and all this sort of stuff. But there were some of his decision making in terms of when to pass where and how, I think was a little bit frustrating at times.
In the second half in particular, when they had Wales in transition. And the other thing that I'm concerned about from watching this is I'm not convinced that McKennie is going to be able to play against England, because he looked bad. Like, once you recognize the fact that he's clearly struggling with the groin or quad injury, it becomes more apparent when you rewatch the game.
And something like that, you're better off resting him against England so you can have him against Iran.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, and I don't want to.
But it kind of makes sense to put in Aronson versus England to just kind of annoy Declan Rice in midfield, to buzz around him and kick him in the shin.
I think Aronson for England is perfect, actually.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. That's Friday at 1. We'll talk more about that on Thanksgiving Day. Yes. For anybody who has asked, we are actually recording a show on Thanksgiving Day, much to my wife's annoyance. We are recording on. Lars, do you even know what Thanksgiving is?
It's an American thing. You eat turkey.
Okay.
I mean,
all right. Andy, do you know what Thanksgiving is?
Do I know what Thanksgiving is?
Well, you're not, you're Canadian and Chilean. I don't know if you pay attention to those things.
Do you know what Kristi Himmelfartsdag is? I didn't think so.
No, I don't. All right. Well, it didn't take long for Andy's prediction of there always being upsets during the World Cup to come true.
Yeah, big day
Except
for
I
Andy.
don't think any of us, considering that I was joking about this being another trucking, it turned out to be much the surprise as Saudi Arabia, unbelievably, and now people are calling it the greatest upset in World Cup history. It's not.
It's their 1950.
It's one of them for sure. Actually beats Argentina. Comes from behind to beat Argentina 2-1, and they messed up the Messi story.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's something we missed because we talk about continental bias, check. Home field advantage, comfortable in surroundings, close to the host country.
Next door, yeah.
Check, and we've been focusing on Qatar and Iran, training together for a while. Check. Previous World Cup experience, Iran had that, Qatar didn't. Check for Saudi Arabia. It's like they almost checked all those check marks, all those intangibles that we kind of focused on Iran and Iraq having, but they didn't completely have all of those. Saudi Arabia did. It's still not enough to think, okay, Argentina is going to lose to them, of course, right? But, maybe we underestimated just a little bit what they could bring to the table.
Yeah, and also the thing we mentioned about how teams that have players who play together normally have a slight edge, possibly. And it was a large number of guys on the Saudi team who play for the same club team, Al Hilal. So they will be beyond, just aside from having been on a training camp and all this, they'll be very familiar with each other. I do have to preface this whole discussion by saying, we got to acknowledge that Saudi Arabia had 3 shots in this game, and 2 of them went in, whereas Argentina had something like 14. So there was a dollop of World Cup magic involved, and that's not taking anything away from them. They defended very, very well, and they defended very intelligently, and we'll get to that. But we also got to say there was a touch of the sort of Twilight Zone magic stuff, and also just when we say home field advantage, it's home field in the sense that they had a lot of fans there. And I saw from people who were there and who'd been covering a few games so far that this was the first game that really felt like a big event with great atmosphere and the fans really affecting proceedings. But it's also worth noting, a couple of years ago, Saudi Arabia were blockading Qatar. It's not like they're best mates. There's a lot of geopolitical tensions here.
Yeah.
And one of the images of the World Cup for me so far is seeing the Emir of Qatar holding up a Saudi flag, which is wild when you think about where they were a couple of years ago. So it's kind of fascinating. But you're not wrong about the regional bias thing that we've been talking about, but there's a whole undercurrent of stuff there that I really don't know enough about to talk about more, but I want to make people aware that it's there.
Yeah, I don't think we meant definitely that's by home field advantage we mean that a
for sure.
Big portion, or they had a home field to the stadium felt like a home match because of the number of supporters they had from Saudi Arabia there. And I think you could hear it through on the television. I mean, that's kind of what we mean by home.
Certainly, and it's worth taking a moment. When we're talking about the Premier League and ownership in different countries, we say a lot of negative things about Saudi Arabia because it's a regime that I'm not particularly fond of myself. But there is still a population of 35 million people there, and a huge part of that population is young. It's a young population. And most of them have nothing to do with the regime of the country and the various nefarious acts they get up to, both at home and abroad. And this kind of stuff is what the World Cup is for. I remember all Norwegian people know where they were when Norway beat Brazil in '98. It's one of those sort of nation-forming moments. And every single sort of Saudi child will know exactly where they were and who they were with and how they felt when this result happened. So that kind of stuff is just amazing.
The big takeaway for me in this, and the lesson that I think the United States could take from this, is going balls out for 90 minutes can get you a long way in tournament play. And for all the things that Saudi Arabia did well today was the level of effort and the fact that they just were unrelenting on Argentina throughout the entire game. There were some tactical things that Renard did very well today and did some smart things. The mid block, the high wire act of the high line.
The high line, I love the high line. I just loved it.
So
You're playing with fire, but
yes, and crazy AI VAR rescued them.
Yeah. But I will say this about what you say. They played loose, like they had not. I think in their mind they had nothing to lose. They're playing Argentina. They have everything to gain.
Sure.
If they play balls out, as you say, and it doesn't work, they lose against Argentina. It's a little different when you're going up against the Wales and
I'm talking about for the U.S. on Friday against England.
Right, okay.
I'm saying if you're going to play England, and England is coming off a 6-2 win, and you're coming off struggling to even tie Wales, you got to amp it up. You got to turn it up. And I just feel like if the United States plays with the attitude and the spunk and spirit that Saudi Arabia did today, that's going to go a long way towards the United States' chances in at least getting a point on Friday.
I was surprised. I shouldn't. I mean, that maybe sounds disrespectful, but I was surprised by just how aggressive Saudi Arabia were, and secondly how badly Argentina dealt with it.
Yes,
because generally speaking, the culture and history of Argentine football, and we see these guys play for their club team. They don't mind a scrap usually. They're usually all up for it, but they seem to not enjoy that. So it is almost as if they were listening to us the night before talking about how this is going to ease them into the tournament, and they were hoping for just a comfortable day out where they could just casually swat aside Saudi Arabia 4-0. But the trouble, when you go into a game with that attitude, suddenly something else happens.
Does anybody know when the last time Argentina had to come from behind to win a game was? I'm sure.
Any game they've been losing, they've had to come from behind to win, but that they did it.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
During qualifying, I don't.
You're talking this current team?
I'm just talking. Yeah, this current team.
Qualifying, they've had.
Did they fall behind in qualifying?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, because they were on this amazing 36 game undefeated run, and the way that they just really appeared to struggle when they went down, it just the wind completely went out of the team's sails. And there was the other thing, real quick. Did anybody else pick up that it just appeared body language wise, facial expression wise, I never got the sense that Argentina realized they were in trouble and they were all really geared up to try to do something about it. It was almost if they were kind of resolved to the fact that this wasn't going to go their way.
I think this is part of what happened. First half, they have, was it 3 or just two or 3 goals disallowed by offside? I think it was 3, right? Or was it just 2? Anyway, they had some goals disallowed. They were up 1-0. They probably felt, this should be 2-3-0. We'll figure things out at halftime. And then the second half starts, and they're tied quickly, and then in the 53rd minute,
I think.
Saudi Arabia scores their second. That's pretty late in the game to suddenly, teams like Argentina, if they go down before they have to reverse the score and then go ahead, that all happens earlier in the match. It's rare for them to suddenly go down to a team like Saudi Arabia that late in the second half, or that late in the game. And I think that was part of it. It's like, we don't have a lot of time to do what we need to do. And then you start to panic a little bit more, and you stop playing your game a little bit, I think.
And I want to talk about what Saudi Arabia did defensively in the second half, because they weren't keeping as high a line. They dropped off a little bit, but they never became deep. And it became almost more of a mid-block, as the coaching people would say. But a mid-block where they were very aggressive when they did press, and they really sort of denied Argentina space in the sort of in the areas in front of the defense where they would want to operate, and where Messi likes to sort of drift around, and he couldn't really find the spaces where he wanted. And they had more possession, obviously, and they had a lot of shots, but really not that many good chances, I didn't think. So it was really impressive stuff from Saudi Arabia, showing a lot of spirit and a lot of discipline, and tactically well drilled.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for those that are panicking because their bracket had Argentina winning, I think all 3 of us in this room, right? Argentina, they can still do it. In 1990, they lost their opening game against Cameroon. They still reached the final. And in fact, can I ask a trivia question, Peter?
Yes. In fact, I would like this to be a daily feature, that you ask a trivia question and we'll answer it before the end of the show.
Okay. Very good. Then.
Old radio trick.
All right, very good. So in the history of the World Cup, we've had 21 champions. So how many of them won the World Cup after losing their first game? And for bonus points, just name who they are and what World Cups they did it in.
I know one of them.
So we'll save that for later in the show.
This is
Lars,
what
no Googling, Lars.
You're meant to know these things. Come on. It's the division of,
Yeah, it's a trivia question I'm asking. I'll give you the
But
answer.
you're the man who's meant to answer the trivia questions. You're
he's
asking
trying-
them to dumb people. That's kind of not.
Well, we're there for the listener too. This
It's
is a game.
educational, and
Yeah.
it'll tie into one of the matches tomorrow. But
I'm gonna check
my
the comments.
my,
Maybe
my
someone's gonna
point
help us
is,
out.
it's not, Argentina can still advance, but I don't, how many people actually, like I was thinking, okay, at worst they're gonna win the game 1-0. They're not actually gonna lose this game. And so now this group gets a little bit more complicated for them because, the result in the other game was a draw, which helps a little bit. And you didn't have a clear winner between Mexico and Poland. But it's not an easy path by any stretch for Argentina. But a team that is expected to go really far and by many to win it all, you expect them to rebound from this the next game, right?
Yes, and so that was kind of my question is, if we're going to say that Argentina gets head right with ball and turns it around, did Saudi Arabia completely expend all their energy in this game, and that's pretty much they're done for at this point? Or do you think they can continue to play at that level in their next two games?
I think it does a lot for their confidence. I mean,
That's a lot of energy, man.
This is a team without a lot of depth, and surprises in World Cup sometimes and more often than not happen in these early games because depth is not as important.
Mm-hmm.
This is where Argentina now is going to benefit in the second and third games in this group and rotation. And this is where Saudi Arabia is going to have a little bit of a deficit against a team like Mexico and to a certain extent Poland as well. So that'll be a factor for sure.
I also think their games against Poland and Mexico are going to be fundamentally different, right? Because again, I really want to make sure I'm not taking anything away from them. They perform diligently and tactically very clever and well drilled and all of that. But they had 3 shots in the game. Like, usually you're going to have more shots than that to score goals, never mind score 2 goals. And it can happen in a game like this, and it's something we see with Manchester City in the Premier League sometimes, that a team that's very, very dominant but can't find a way through almost start becoming a little bit casual and a little bit relaxed, and they get surprised the other way. The games are going to be very, very different against Poland and Mexico, and the whole nature of it will be different, but they have given themselves an incredible chance to do something, especially with the other 2 teams drawing.
Yeah, we'll talk about Mexico and Poland here in a little bit. A couple of things from the game. One, did you guys pick up on the after the game, all the social media viral thing about the Saudi Arabia center back confronting Messi and telling him to his face that they will not win this game? Have you seen this?
Oh, that I haven't seen.
So
I've seen
there's a
the
video.
celebrations.
There's a video of the center back walking up to Messi at some point in the second half. I think it's after they scored their second goal, and he taps Messi on the back of the shoulder, and he kind of gets in Messi's face, and I can't tell, like, you can't really tell because Messi's reaction is so kind of like, I can't believe this is happening to me. Well, I've seen reports that it was later, they're claiming that the center back apparently went to Messi and was like running smack and was telling him, you guys are not going to win this game. And Messi didn't know what to do with that. And if it's a true story, it's one of the ballsiest stories I've ever heard.
Was that early in the game?
No, it was after they scored, I think, their second goal.
Oh, okay.
Like he just now I've seen the video. I'm not sure that the transcription of the conversation is accurate, but man, I love that version of the story. If that in fact is true, is that he had the nutsack to walk up to Messi and essentially run noise on him like that.
This is so sad for Messi, who's a tourism ambassador for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
He
very well-paid ambassador.
Oh,
yes.
is there a conspiracy theory here?
Well, I'm just saying.
Is there a conspiracy? He didn't have a good game. Lord.
Can't get no respect.
Real quick before we get off of Argentina, now there's a real possibility if they do advance, they advance in second place, and now they're on a collision course.
Did they do it on purpose so they get Brazil in the final? No, just kidding.
but also France in the round of 16.
Yeah.
Pick your poison.
Yeah, for sure.
But they're in a slightly, they're going to have to, I mean, it sounds a little bit basic, but they're going to have to play better against Poland and Mexico.
Sure.
But I mean more specifically in terms of moving the ball. I thought they became a little bit predictable and a little bit one-paced, and you were kind of waiting for someone to break the pattern a little bit and turn, but it was a little bit samey and predictable.
So remember, one big favorite, one giant, every World Cup doesn't get out of group play. Who will it be?
Today went the opposite of how I thought it was going to play out.
Yeah.
Argentina might be that team.
It can't be. By the way, I was also treated with the news that Carly Lloyd and I had the same 2 in the final. By the way, Lars, if you didn't know, I've got a friendship with Carly Lloyd.
Do you know?
So, yeah.
She also had Denmark in the final.
Yeah, she has Denmark and Argentina in the
speaking
final.
of Denmark.
And I heard that today, and I thought, that's my girl right there. All right, moving on to the next game at 7 a.m. was Denmark-Tunisia. And this was I don't know. I don't have a ton of notes in my notebook about this one.
Well, okay. Leave it to me if you want. I have some
please, Lars.
Quick takes. Well, so a game with 2 halves, I thought, but certainly the first half, Tunisia were more aggressive than expected. I think a lot of people were expecting them to sit back and try to, well, I say a lot of people, me certainly, and other people whose articles I've seen. And I think the Danes were wary of the heat in the afternoon, and they were worried of a slow, attritional game. Wasn't that game at all. Tunisia, possibly fired up by the large number of Tunisians in the crowd. They also had a real noise behind them. But either way, they kind of took the game to Denmark a little bit and pressed them high. Denmark could never get into a good passing rhythm, really struggled in playing decent football in the first 35. Whereas Tunisia, on the other hand, didn't really create big chances either. So it ended up being not a great watch, I have to say. And any of you guys listening in the US, like if you got yourself up very early to watch Argentina, I can imagine the temptation to head back to bed would have been quite significant.
I have to admit, I got sleepy during Denmark and Tunisia.
Yeah, the first half in particular was like, ooh. Yeah. In the second half, I thought Denmark improved. I thought they managed to get more people up the field. Eriksson dropped a little bit deeper. I think that helped in terms of building their passing play, and they were able to create some chances, but not.
Oh my God, that chance!
There was one with the big Andreas Cornelius on the back stake, who I think decided to head a ball that definitely should have been kicked.
Yes,
and it ended up looking a bit bad for him. In the end, not a great game, not an eventful game. Bit of a reality check maybe for Denmark, who, a lot of people, including myself, were high on going into the tournament and who have been sort of not too bullish, but they've been saying, hey, we feel like we can beat anyone on our day. And, their coach said in the run-up to the tournament, we've beaten England at Wembley, we've beaten France at the Stade de France, why should we be afraid of anyone? But there are some shortcomings in this team, and we saw quite a few of them in this game, whereas Tunisia, full marks for stopping the Danes.
On the Cornelius miss, one of the curiosities I have about the growth of stats in soccer is specifically around XG, and one of the things I went and looked on the FOTMOB app was how did they grade that incident? Mm-hmm. And so penalty kicks are given a 0.79 rating. I mean, 80% of the time somebody scores in that position. Initially, that situation was given a 0.9. 90% of the time somebody scores. But I've now just looked, they've reduced it. It's down to 0.81, which always makes me very curious about this whole XG thing and how legitimate it actually is if they can slide the values as they have in this case, because it was obviously one he should have scored.
So after what we've seen today, and we'll talk about France in the next segment, but Denmark, are you still high on them, Peter?
Yeah, I said yesterday, I wondered if they would be a team that kind of starts a little slowly and works their way up. Lars is right. They have today was not a great showing for them, but I do believe they're a team that's going to get better as the tournament progresses. Man, Eriksson looks so good, and it's amazing. What an amazing story that guy is living out right now.
He had a good shot too.
He did.
Yeah, they need a striker. This is one of the things to look out for Denmark.
Like so many teams, right?
Yeah, and it's just Kasper Dolberg. He's a mysterious guy. His club coach is Jorge Sampaoli, our old friend from Argentina in the last World Cup, who's a kind of like a fiery character, Argentine man, who has accused Dahlberg of being a little bit introvert and sort of being difficult to integrate into the team because he's a bit of an introvert and doesn't speak Spanish and stuff. He's a lot of an odd character. It was a big deal for Denmark during the Euros that he suddenly scored a couple of goals, but he wasn't up to much in this game. And Cornelius, who came on, he's a bit of a bull in a china shop of a player, a bit of a wrecking ball. He has merit, but the absence of a clear number 9 puts a bit of pressure on the players around up front, like someone like Skov, for maybe scoring instead. But they need to find the goals.
Okay, let's take our first break. We will do that, and when we come back, we'll talk about France's big win next.
We were 27 in, so I just want to make sure that
we were. You got to remember the clock starts when I start running all the pre-video, so we're actually 3 or 4 minutes minus that. So think about We are back for part 2 of Matchday 2 of Qatar KickAround, the wrap-up show. And I think now is the time that we should get into Mexico-Poland. My mom actually called me today and said, hey, we watched Mexico-Poland today. It ended up 0-0. I'm like, oh, no.
They'll never watch soccer again now.
No, that wasn't.
That was not the game I would have recommended you watch, Mommy. Yes, so... Well, I also want to point out today was a good day overall in one aspect, and that's for kit nerds like me. We finally got a day where the majority of the games featured kit assignments where they weren't all monochromed kits. It wasn't all red versus all white. Like Mexico was green-white with their red socks. France today was blue-white. I thought even Saudi Arabia with Argentina with their classic stripes with the black shorts.
So this is a change now?
FIFA apparently has relaxed on that aspect, and I'm
we get the classic kits back.
Yes. Trying to see Argentina play in light blue shorts just was stupid. So if you're into the kit stuff, today was a good day. So Mexico-Poland, this was a game that in my mind was absolutely equally the snoozer to Denmark-Tunisia up until the penalty kick opportunity for Robert Lewandowski.
Yeah, I found it maybe a little bit more entertaining just because it was a CONCACAF team, and I tend to pay more attention to those because they're one of the teams in our region. And I didn't find that Mexico was lacking too much quality. I thought they were okay until the final third. Then I thought I didn't think they had a good performance in the final third. But I think Mexico outplayed Poland, who seems like a one-trick pony kind of team. I don't know if you agree, Lars, but ultimately neither team did what they needed to do to be able to score a goal, including not being able to convert a penalty kick.
I would say it's not the first time I've seen this Poland team and felt like this is a hard watch, man. This has happened before. There's something about, one thing, whatever about only having Lewandowski up front, it's just they're just a little bit heavy, and there's just a lack of speed. There's a lack of someone who can do unexpected things.
Imagination.
Just a little bit. And they have a little bit of thrust coming down the wing backs. But then that led to like the angriest I was all day, I think, is towards the end when you had a moment where Krychowiak, that noted goal scorer, Krychowiak in midfield, decided to have a go from range instead of playing in what I'm sure was Matty Cash on the overlay. They don't move the ball that well. They don't have a lot of speed. There's just not a lot of stuff to get excited about in this team, except for, of course, if they can manage to get it to Lewandowski anywhere in and around the box, then obviously there's danger, except it turns out from the penalty spot.
So, and before we analyze that whole situation, Peter, you've seen Mexico play quite a bit, right? Just because they're our neighbors. I didn't think they looked that bad. They were attacking down the flanks. It looked like a typical Mexico.
Yes.
And unlike years past, the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen a very not inconsistent Mexico, but a Mexico that lacks the final touch in the final third. And that was today was a perfect example of the Mexico we've seen.
Like many teams in this tournament, they're just really desperate for a goal scorer. They got a lot of interesting midfield play, and they can do a lot of things. Chucky is fantastic, but he's not the kind of guy to do it by himself. And I thought they were a little sloppier today than I typically
heavy touches.
Yeah, heavy touches.
Third,
I would expect a little bit better performance out of Mexico in that case, but I thought they played better today than I saw them many times during qualification. I mean, the qualification was a really messy process for them, and I thought they looked better today. Every time I see Tata Martino coaching for Mexico, I always ask myself, is that the next coach of the U.S. men's national team?
Do you want it to be?
I don't know, because he's so clearly having problems getting. I mean, when we all found out Tata was going to Mexico, we assumed that was the ingredients that made the greatest dinner of all in CONCACAF history, and it's been anything but. It's been a real mess, and I don't know if that's the Mexican Federation. I don't know if that's Tata. I don't know what it is.
Challenging players. I think it's a challenge to manage. It's a challenge to be the head coach of the Mexican national team for various reasons.
Is it
for many reasons?
Okay, but is it difficult?
It's like being the national team coach of England.
Okay,
which is not easy, and that's why Southgate, I think, deserves a lot of credit, because he's done things that are difficult to do.
So you're thinking in terms of internal politics of various players.
There's a lot of it in Mexico. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Can I also throw to Andy, who knows this team a lot better than I do? It occurs to me that we have this idea of how we think Tata Martino wants to play, based on the fact that he's a little bit Bielsa inspired, and we remember seeing that great Atlanta United, not Atalanta, but Atlanta United team. But I wonder if you look at just how many old guys they have.
Yes.
It's going to be a little bit difficult playing that way.
It is difficult for that reason, and difficult because this is a team, a national team, that never played this style. And they also, it's more of a warm weather. I always contend that Bielsa's style, like national teams that tend to play in colder climates, or if you're going to use that in league play, you have to do that in colder climates, because if you do that in the heat week after week after week, you just can't do it. That's why Chile, Argentina, cold climate countries from South America are able to use that system. It's used in England, etc. So Mexico is not used to that style, and he's imposing that on the players. And he's found kind of a hybrid. He hasn't fully gone that way because there was rebellion inside the locker room.
Yeah.
So you're saying hire him for the U.S. men's national team and play every home game in Wyoming.
Yeah, well,
in Minnesota.
It's just a different different mentality that players that come from colder climates bring right also. So I mean, it's part of it is mental.
Is there a stadium in Anchorage? What kind of capacity have you got up there?
Well,
every time the U.S. plays Mexico or a lot of teams from certain areas of CONCACAF, they take them to cold weather climates during qualifying. There's a reason. You always look for the home field advantage, right?
Of course.
Yes, and so I do spend a lot of time wondering who the next coach is, and that just pops in my head. I'm sorry, I apologize for bringing it constantly back to the United States, but I do think about that a lot, and I just wonder how good he would be as the American coach, considering the issues he's having in Mexico.
I'm just looking at some numbers here to back up my sort of vague impressions of this game. In terms of like pass accuracy, like the holding midfielder for Poland, Krychowiak, is 64%. Szymanski, who's ahead of him, was 65%.
Yeah.
So like if you have central midfielders who are misplacing close to 4 out of 10 passes,
the definition of a holding midfielder is to hold the ball, right?
Absolutely,
to hold possession.
You really don't want that. Like maybe you're playing like super aggressive and looking for the runner in behind every time, but I saw the game. They weren't doing that.
Yeah.
So, not good.
Let's talk about the penalty kick. First off, did everybody agree that the PK which was awarded by VAR, was that the right decision?
I think it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, would you agree that the VAR decision probably had nothing to do with the shirt pull and everything to do with the leg reaching across Lewandowski? That's what I thought that ultimately was the game changer.
I guess having both those just made it a no-brainer for the referee.
Basically, there were certainly 2 fouls, 1 3/4 foul. That's more than enough foul for.
All right, this is I'm just being a nerd about it. I thought Lewandowski and I can't remember the name of the center back. I thought they were kind of in a shove hold battle going on. I thought that was very 50-50. It was when the center back reached out with his leg across Lewandowski and he goes over that. I thought that was when it kind of flipped into a penalty kick or an actual foul. But whatever. That's the minutia nobody else cares about other than me. So Lewandowski, who's never scored a World Cup goal, lines up, and I said it. I was telling the TV, I was like, this is not going in. I don't know how or why, but it's not going before he took it for 2 reasons. 1, he looked nervous as hell, and 2, he picked the ball up a second time and reset it. And I every time I see a player set the ball down and then some time goes by, and for whatever reason they decide they have to go back and pick the ball back up and reset it, I think they're in their own head and they're not comfortable. And it wasn't a terrible penalty kick, but it certainly wasn't great. And Memo Ochoa does it again. And man, the game completely caught fire after that moment.
For a little bit, then it reverted back to
okay.
And credit to Memo Ochoa in World Cups. I mean, the guy takes it up a notch, as they say in World Cup play.
For sure.
Yeah.
Lars,
that was a great save. I mean, you could argue. I mean, I know there are people who would argue that all missed penalties have to be terrible penalties because you should score your penalties. I'm sympathetic to that view, put it that way. But I don't think this was an awful penalty. I thought it was a really good save.
It was a fantastic save, but it's also Robert Lewandowski, and you expect him to, dunk it in the upper bucket and
for sure.
Make it unsavable.
Compare it to Gareth Bale's PK. That was guessed right, and it was unstoppable still. And Lewandowski.
I suppose it's the way you'd put it is that there are ways of taking a penalty that makes it basically unsavable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Messi took his today.
Lewandowski, by the way, has not scored in a World Cup.
No, that's what I was saying. He lined up. Looked like that was the weight on his shoulders in that moment. Was I need to score my first World Cup. Now, Lars, we're going to be honest with the listener here, because during these games we're WhatsApping with each other, and this was the game that I think you were particularly nonplussed by the action and found other things to do, and you shared with us a list.
I lost interest, I gotta admit.
You shared with us in the chat a list of things that you got accomplished during the 90 minutes, and I would like for you to share that list with the listener, please.
I think the word accomplished is not the correct one. It's just things I found myself looking up.
Distracted by?
you find yourself Googling. You know, I have more than one monitor here in the office. So
if you don't have the list, Lars, I do, and I'll be glad to read it for you because it's a damn good list.
So I initially started looking. So I started Googling laptops and like offers. Because my laptop is dying. The poor thing, like the screen keeps falling out, and it's not good. So I was looking for like Black Friday offers for laptops. Then I was looking initially for different kinds of dog food. Doing my research because I'm thinking of switching the diet for my beloved hound, and then like I'm sat right next to a door out to the back garden here, and it is getting cold in London, I can tell you. So I started looking up draft excluders to sort of maybe because my legs are cold. I've got a blanket on my lap as we speak. I feel like a pensioner, and then for some reason I just remembered. I don't know why I thought of this, but there was a footballer with one arm. From in the elite section and first section in Norwegian football about 15 years ago, we had a guy who played for Fredrikstad, where Celso Borges played later on, by the way. So it was a very notable football club for the CONCACAF people. We had a one-armed footballer, and I go, what was that guy's name, and where did he end up? I mean, I think the fact that this is my search history is maybe really in itself the recap we need from Mexico-Poland.
Well, I'm also beginning to wonder if you've already gotten to the overly tired of too much football mode on day two, on match day 2.
No. Absolutely not, my friend.
Go ahead, Lee.
It's just having 2 games like that in a row. Like I was kind of hyped for Denmark-Tunisia. I was hyped for it, and then it wasn't that good. I was relieved as well because I had a quick sort of phone hit on the big sports talk radio station in the UK, 5 Live. And for some reason, I have a very checkered history with them. Whenever they have me on, something goes wrong. Usually something small, like I get bumped for something. And then, of course, it was that time Christian Eriksen died, so that was also unfortunate. So it's just generally speaking, it's a bad omen that I am on this radio station. But I was on it. I didn't say anything dumb. It was okay. No one's died, as far as I'm aware of, in the football today, so that was excellent. Håkan Söderstjerna was
Argentina.
His name, God, brutal. The Swedish man Håkan Söderstjerna actually played first-tier league football in Sweden and in Norway briefly with one arm. You don't see it very often.
How did you? That's fascinating. And that just is an indicator of just how bored you were during this game.
Yeah, it probably is. Apologies to our Mexican listeners. I do like you as a team. I hope you are better next time.
All right.
By the way,
oh yes,
a little bit of trouble for Mexico though, because now they face Argentina, who needs a desperate win or needs to win desperately, and then a Saudi Arabia team who's a little bit better than we thought. Mexico's not in great shape.
Look, there's no way Mexico doesn't get out of the group and lose in the round of 16. It's just destined to be that way forever, Andy. Don't ruin my don't harsh my buzz, man.
It's the thing we almost haven't mentioned it because it's so. The event is almost bigger. Like the upset of Saudi Arabia beating Argentina in itself is going to be one of the things that people remember from this tournament. But, those 3 points are pretty damn handy for Saudi Arabia as well. It puts them in a great spot in this group. They just need to do something in one of the games.
Yep.
And
suddenly it's looking great.
Yep.
It is nuts. All right. And now I want to turn our attention to France versus Australia, where I was notified just minutes into the game, a team was featuring a player who plays in the Japanese 2nd division. And this was news to me.
Yeah, the centre forward for Australia plies his trade in the J2 league, not the J League. Mitchell Duke, his name is.
I didn't even know there was a J2 league. Lars.
Fagiano Okayama FC. He plays for, which is, I mean, I know this sounds patronizing, but it is part of the magic of the World Cup is that you do get a guy from the 2nd tier in Japan coming up against Kylian Mbappe, and they're both there on merit. It's cool. It's a part of the competition.
And he almost hit an absolute worldie to take a 2-0 lead. By the way, he was
plus
he was that close.
He's contributing to them taking a 1-0 lead on the world champions. Now, I want to. I don't know if I want to apologize to the French, but, I was like, I don't know if this team will get... Look, they look good today, right? It was Australia, though. Let's keep that in mind. They had the first 10 minutes that they got out of the way. Okay, let's...
You remember me from last night. I was unusually scathing about them because I really want to be pro-Australia, but they're just short on quality, man. I'm sorry. And you really saw that. And I mentioned this in our chat. There was a difference in how France reacted to going a goal down and how Argentina reacted to going a goal behind, to which you, Andy, very correctly replied there was a difference in the opponents as well.
Yeah, the opponents, the time that the goals were scored to, I mean, Argentina had to do it later in the game. And more than good, just comfortable.
All right.
They look comfortable and they looked happy.
Here's what I was surprised by, because we've talked a lot about the loss of Pogba and the loss of Kante, and then kind of the running commentary about how we always talk about France having such a deep bench that they could put 2 teams in the tournament, and now what's going on with that. I thought Tuchumeni and Rabiot were really, really good today, and those are the guys that replace those 2 dudes. And I don't know if they're good enough to win another World Cup, but I'd like to have one of those guys playing on my national team. They both looked really good today, again, against Australia.
Also, their bench is so deep that one brother gets hurt, they just stick in his brother. Here, they're just so good that way.
Yeah. Now, there's an interesting dynamic in that. I think Tchouaméni, as your new holding midfielder, is perfectly fine. He's very, very, very good. Rabiot is an interesting case because Rabiot is finally starting to look all right. He's been playing okay for Juventus this season. For a long time, Rabiot has been kind of a punchline is a bit harsh, but he's a player whose maybe ego and the drama around him doesn't quite live up to the...
his mom is his agent, if that's really kind of all you kind of need to know.
And we're not going to do a full part of it, but I think just to get the tip of the iceberg, last World Cup, he wasn't selected for the squad, but he was shortlisted, and he refused to be on the shortlists. He was like, "No, I will not be on the short list." And
Lars'
this is
character voice is there. I'm telling you, man, it's a hit.
This for like a guy who's a solid 6 out of 10 midfield performer is strange behavior. It's like you're behaving like a diva when what you are is a reasonable midfielder with a good engine. Like, this is very strange. Now, in fairness to him, he's been good for Juventus this season, or lately anyway, and he was good in this game. What I really like, what made my ears perk up a little bit here, was the team selection and the formation, because Didier Deschamps has had France playing with a back 3 for quite a while, which is a system that, well, for the last, in the Nations League and stuff, which is a system that never fully made sense to me because they don't really have that wing backs. I'm not sure that's what they have, but they have a few wingers and there's no room for them. And when when the selection was made, when he picked the squad, it was made clear he was reverting to a back 4. Okay, interesting. Everyone assumed that meant Benzema and Mbappe up front with Griezmann in behind, so kind of a midfield diamond kind of a shape, which still would have me slightly worried because, again, then you need width from fullback, and I'm not sure they have it, or not enough of it. Whereas here, of course, Deschamps went in a completely different direction. It's a 4-2-3-1 type of thing, 4-3-3. 4-2-3-1 really, with the big sexy Olivier Giroud up front and Griezmann playing off him, Mbappe kind of to the left-ish, but really just kind of floating around, and Dembele playing as a winger on the right side.
Such a ridiculous.
Do you think they can win some games?
I really like that setup. I think that's pretty balanced and nice, and I think in that setup, you having 2 guys in Tchouaméni and Rabiot who both covers a lot of ground as the 2 behind it, I think is very useful. And obviously it was just Australia, but I thought the dynamics looked pretty good there. And again, I'm going to bang this drum again. I'm a big Olivier Giroud stan, who now, by the way, has equaled Thierry Henry to be the greatest ever goal scorer for the French national team. He knows what he is and who he is. Like, he knows he's there to obviously get on the end of crosses and score goals if he can, but he also knows his big brief is like being a good teammate for Kylian Mbappe, and doesn't mind that he's the big star. And I think that creates a much better balance in that whole front line.
Mbappe is an alien of a player, and
he's very good.
And I'm fairly convinced Dembele is like the near clone of him on the opposite side. The 2 of them running from the wings at a defense would put the fear into anybody, I'd have to think.
Yeah, and that's kind of a low-key big story of world football in the last 12 months or so. Is Ousmane Dembele getting his groove back? Because he had completely lost his way at Barcelona. He kept picking up injuries, and there were all kinds of murmurings about internal disciplinary issues with him. people kind of joking that, the most important thing Barcelona can do for Dembele is buy him an alarm clock. And there's a story going around that he'd set a new club record for quantity of fines, or size of fines, actually. So he had some issues in terms of lifestyle, I think it's fair to say, in his first couple of years at Barcelona. And then you get injuries as well, and one kind of exacerbates the other, perhaps. There was a real chance of him leaving on a free this summer as well and going somewhere else. But he stayed, took a pay cut to stay, and he's staying healthy and he's looking really useful. And I'm looking back almost a year. The president Laporta of Barcelona said something about Dembele being, as good as Mbappe, and people thought he was on drugs. What are you talking about, Laporta? That's insane. And it still is kind of crazy, but you can kind of see his point in the sense that he's also rapid. He's got a lovely balance, can use both feet, and having him back and finding a role for him in that team, I think is a really interesting way for France to go with it in this World Cup.
So I think now we're feeling that France will finish in first in this group after all, right? I mean, after what we saw today, and also from Denmark and Tunisia,
I think the France-Denmark game up next is really interesting.
Because if France does finish first, now they're back on the other side of the bracket, and now they're on a collision course, not only to play Argentina as the second-place finisher, if Argentina advances.
And England.
And then England in the quarters.
Yeah.
So, tough road to hoe.
Yeah. But England looked better than France did today. France still gave up some opportunities.
So we're still thinking England semis instead of France.
And they've both kind of faced teams who were in, I wouldn't say Australia disintegrated, but there was a real gulf in quality there. So it's kind of hard to judge, I think.
For sure.
Tunisia just was better today than I anticipated, and I'm not quite sure if...
Last World Cup, England needed a 91st minute goal from Harry Kane to beat Tunisia in the opening game.
That's right. Okay.
And they've had draws against European sides. They're not a bad side. The issue with them is that they have a hard time scoring goals. But if they draw against France, like they find a way to draw 0-0 somehow, and then, they find a result, they get a win against Australia, there's no reason why to think Tunisia might be in the mix too.
We're going to take a break.
I want to bring in a comment from our YouTube stream. I know you're not really supposed to do that, but from Adam McGargy, who says that Giroud is the best-looking man to ever score in the World Cup. And I can only, again, as the resident Olivier Giroud stan, what a handsome man. What a career he's had. He's really old, but he's still useful. He just scored 2 goals in the World Cup. And I know I try to minimize my gambling talk, because I know the attitudes are a little bit different depending on what territory you're in and this sort of thing. I may have had a small bet on Olivier Giroud being the top scorer in this tournament, and the reason I did that is not because I'm a crazy person. It's just because I heard about the Benzema injury before it became official. So before they slashed the odds on
That's insider trading, Lars.
I managed to put £10 on it, so I have a £10 bet on Giroud to be top scorer, just because. With Benzema out, it was written in the stars that he would play pretty much every game for France. And the odds you were getting on a guy who plays every game for France winning the golden shoe, whatever they call it, the golden ball, the top scorer thing, the odds were delicious. So if big sexy Olivier Giroud can be top scorer, that'll be worth something like 670.
He's a fanboy.
So come on, Olivier.
You're a Giroud fanboy.
Come on, my sweet prince.
Let's pay for that electricity bill.
And a draft excluder. And possibly some dog food.
Yes. All right. We will now take a break. When we come back, we'll preview tomorrow match day 3, and answer Andy's trivia question next. This is part 3 for Matchday 3 of Qatar KickAround, our daily wrap-up show of all things happening in the World Cup over there in the Middle East. All right, let's first off, let's treat everybody to the answer to our new daily feature, World Cup Trivia with Andy Swift. What was the question
the
earlier?
question, out of the 21 World Cup champions we've had to date, how many won the World Cup after losing their opening game in the World Cup? And bonus points if you can name who they are and what World Cup that happened in. Peter, we'll start with you and your guesses.
My only guess, because I'm honest and did not Google it when you weren't looking, I remember Spain losing their first game in 2010 and going on to win that tournament. But I am not
familiar. Did we not discuss that in one of the preview shows?
We did. Yeah, that came up when we were talking about Spain.
Really very good memory, Peter.
About Spain
I do remember
being slow starters.
Because I do remember that. I remember thinking when Spain lost, oh no, they're the next team to blow it and fall out in the group, get kicked out in the group stage, and they didn't.
Starters,
All right. So other than that, I don't know off the
and
top
Lars,
of my head.
any guesses or no?
I'm frustrated. Can I just say, when Peter told me we were doing this World Cup, my thing was like, oh, great, because I'm really bad at trivia, so I can't wait to do this show with Andy, who is great at trivia. And then the way it's turned out is that Andy's asking me trivia questions, which is very much the opposite of what I was hoping would happen.
That's all right. So it was a little bit of a trick question because there is only one. You were right, Peter.
It is? Okay,
Yeah,
Spain is the only one.
Spain is the only one.
See, I thought you were going to roll out a 1958 or something on me.
So Argentina, would have to match that. To have lost their opening game and still win the World Cup. And I bring that up because a lot of people have Argentina in their brackets as winning the tournament.
Right. Me and Carly Lloyd. You,
Lars.
I think Lars, yes, we all do. And my question, let's go back to that initial thing, which is today's loss by Argentina to Saudi Arabia the biggest upset in World Cup history?
I think there have been a few. I don't know if it's the biggest, and I don't even know if it's bigger than the U.S. beating England in 50.
See, I don't. Yeah, okay.
The upset,
I don't understand the context of back then. You understand that better than I do.
The upset in 1950, when the media, the press, got the Telegraph back home, the score.
Right.
They saw 1-0.
The ticker tape?
Yeah. They assumed it was 10-0 England, and some even printed that in the newspaper.
Wow. Okay. Is it bigger than North Korea beating Italy in 1966?
That's the other big one.
So what about Argentina losing to
Cameroon
just not that long ago?
In 1990. No, Cameroon had a team that went all the way to the quarters. They had been in the World Cup and had played fairly well in that one. Saudi Arabia just came out of nowhere, but we should have seen it, right, guys? When we go through the checklist, they were that team from the Middle East that we should have focused on instead of so much Iran and Qatar.
Maybe. I think I was initially going to say, well, because these days the bests are so good that makes the upset even bigger. But actually, having thought about it, the thing about elite level soccer now everywhere in the world is that actually in terms of nutrition, in terms of like basic the training routines and coaching, the overall level has been raised. So you're not going to have any teams of like semi-pros or part-timers or people who just don't really know what they're doing at this sort of level, which maybe if you go 5-6 decades back, you might have had some teams who would rock up at the World Cup who would be almost like hobby players who would run into full-time pros from some of the big countries. So I would actually agree. I've actually changed my mind during the course of this discussion. I think I agree with Andy. I think those upsets probably in context are even bigger.
The coach by the way, of Saudi Arabia, I forget his name now, Lars
Renard.
Renard.
He won. He took
He's handsome.
Zambia. He is. Gerard has a competition there.
French Jamie Lannister.
He took Zambia,
the prince from Shrek,
and won the Africa Cup with Zambia.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
Zambia,
quite something too.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is not bad.
That was an incredible story, and if you guys have time on your hands, I mean, in the celebrations, in the immediate aftermath, he actually carried one of his players from the bench over to the huddle because one of his most important players, I'm pretty sure it was a defender, got a muscle injury and had to go off and was just in tears at having to leave the field and felt he was disappointing his team.
What about the one the goalkeeper murdered?
And then when they actually won the game and there were crazy celebrations, Renard, the coach, actually carried his player over to celebrate with the other players.
That's nice.
The footage is absolutely unbelievable.
I'm still convinced that what we haven't been told yet is that defender that the goalkeeper absolutely wrecked is actually dead, because that was a terrible that knee straight to the face, and then he double hit his head on the ground. That guy's got to be in bad shape. Have you heard anything about his status?
It is one of those things when you start thinking, should they be playing with helmets of some kind? Maybe it's one of these events. I know this is an age-old.
That was one of the most aggressive goalkeepers in the box I have seen in a long time. That dude was throwing himself about all over the place. Now, it worked in his favor until that moment where I was pretty convinced he had almost killed that dude. Yeah. All right, let's go into tomorrow. We're wasting time. I'm wasting time, not y'all. Morocco, Croatia at 4 a.m. on FS1. Anybody? Lars, we may have to assign this to you for homework, because I don't know if Andy and I want to get up at 4 a.m. for Morocco, Croatia.
Listen, U.S. fans, it's a long tournament. There's a lot of soccer to be played. I will not judge you if you don't get up for this one, I have to say. But I'm looking forward to it because Morocco is one of the teams I'm curious about, because on paper, there are some really good players here. I'm not fully convinced they'll work as a group, as a team, as a unit, but that remains to be seen. There are some talented guys on the squad.
They give you some Tunisia vibes a little bit.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's just, as opposed to Tunisia, they've got quite a few guys who are playing like for solid, like Hakimi at the right back, plays for Paris Saint-Germain. Masraoui is a right back who they have to move to the left because they got two great right backs. But he plays for Bayern Munich. Hakim Ziyech is there. The striker En-Nesyri plays for Sevilla in Spain. Sofiane Boufal is incredibly talented but very frustrating. But that's a whole nother story. But there's some really technically capable players on this roster. Are they good enough as a team? We don't know, but I am actually quite keen to watch this game tomorrow and learn more about them. Though I completely understand, again, if you're one of our usual Dallas-based listeners, if you're not getting up for this one. Well,
I might get up. I might get up at 4 because I want to see Modric play.
Yeah, because Andy, Croatia is one of the many countries Andy claims.
Plus, the Modric, it's Modric. Probably his last World Cup.
That's true.
He's magic.
Isn't Morocco the one that fired their manager after qualification because the players didn't like him? There was a player revolt, and so they got the guy they had.
It is.
Specifically, Hakim Ziyech didn't like him, and the FA, I think, were on Ziyech's side.
And he's back. He's back in the roster.
I think that's very unstable. So, all right,
the
next game.
So they have a new guy who's come in, and there's also this point which I want to make. I know we're running out of time, but according to the very excellent football writer who covers the African continent, Mark Gleeson, he's South African, I believe. There's a huge issue with, there's so many players from the diaspora in this group. They've got something like 14 guys on the squad who were not born in Morocco. And it turns out a few of them don't speak Moroccan or Arabic because they've been raised in various European countries where they've not necessarily learned those languages. So they might have internal communications issues within the squad, which is not something that usually happens in international football.
Next up at 7 a.m. is Germany versus Japan. Two thoughts about this. I have this weird realization that we've not talked a lot about the Germans. And that worries me.
That was my that was the point I was going to make about this game and about Germany and now I think did you pick them first, Lars? I think you did, to finish first in the group.
I did.
Second.
Yes.
So we're already giving them some credit, and I think because they didn't advance out of group play in the last World Cup, and this is kind of not a rebuilding generation, but not the strongest generation they've had. But they're going to use a lot of Bayern players in the starting lineup. That's smart and pragmatic, and it makes a lot of sense, especially in this World Cup. 21 World Cups have been played. They've finished in the top 4 13 times, and 16 straight quarterfinal finishes other than the last one.
All right, and Lars, I want to ask you this question because I saw a headline today. Is this correct that Japan may actually start more Bundesliga players in this game tomorrow than Germany will?
I think it's theoretically possible, but not plausible.
Yeah.
Japan, when I looked at the Japan roster, I was shocked at the number of players that play in the Bundesliga.
So they can be. They just fit in there quite well because they produce quite a lot of hard-running, industrious players, and of course, in German football, pressing and counter-pressing is a big deal. So they've had a lot of success.
Maybe Elon Musk tweeted that. Look, it's not true.
Germany is a machine. 13 times top 4, 16 straight quarterfinals until last year, and we're focused on last year or last World Cup. This is Germany.
And they're one of those teams who have the talent to go very deep, but they also have a few holes in the team.
They do.
So for me, watching these first couple of group stage games is all about seeing how Hansi Flick is trying to cover up those holes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You want to predict something about that one, Andy?
I think Germany wins that game.
Lars?
Let's call it 3-1 Germany.
I'm going to go 2-2 draw.
Oh,
Ooh.
okay.
I don't know why.
You're going with one of those early surprises.
Early surprise.
This is one of yours.
Next up, the 10 a.m. game here in Dallas is Spain and Costa Rica. CONCACAF powers here.
Yeah, Spain historically slow starter. The last 11 they played in the last 11 World Cups. They are two wins, 3 draws, and 6 losses in their first games. They've only won 2 of those 11 first games in World Cups. They start off slow. But they've even won a World Cup after.
But they're playing Costa Rica.
But they're playing Costa Rica, so I don't know if this is one of those games they don't win. Because this is the weakest Costa Rica team we've seen in a long time.
We're pretty familiar with the Costa Ricans, and I'm just telling you, this isn't the same Costa Rican team that actually ended up winning the group of death.
Well, I say the problem is it is. I mean, surely the problem is that it is more or less the same Costa Rican team.
Oh, yeah, right. Yes,
okay,
right. Yes. Yeah, correct.
Yes, okay.
Both of you have a correct statement.
It is the same team. They're just about
guys.
8 years older. Yes,
that's the issue, right? That's the issue.
Exactly. No, always happy to see Celso Borges play football because he listen, he went to Norway, he played well here, and he left a very positive impression at the club he was at in Norway, I can say that. And but listen, this kind of has Spain 1-0 and 89% possession written all over it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree with Lars because Costa Rica, at the end of the day, they will defend well. They'll keep their shape. They'll be organized. They just won't score.
And
maybe this is the game where Spain somehow have more than 100% possession. They will crack some kind of
universal.
Yeah, it's kind of like the World Cup attendances. We keep seeing attendance figures that are higher than the capacity of the stadium.
The universe will collapse in on itself or something like that. And the last game, the 1 p.m. game, close to Andy's heart, the Maple Leafs taking on Kevin De Bruyne and Belgium. Belgium and Canada. What kind of Canada are we going to get? Can we get the Canadian machine that just rammed through CONCACAF qualifying? Will that appear in its form, in all its Maple Leaf glory?
Historically, qualifying record doesn't necessarily mean much once the World Cup rolls around. And Canada doesn't have a lot of experience. We talked about how the U.S. players don't have World Cup experience. The Canadians are going to be going through the same thing, right? They're going to be amped up early. I don't know. I don't know what to expect from Canada, especially against Belgium, a seasoned team. I mean, this is their kind of last hurrah as a group.
Buchanan and Davies going against some of that old Belgian back lines.
100%. In fact, won't be 100%.
Yeah. I'll still take 60% Davies against.
Is Belgium the surprise team that doesn't advance? Did I pick? No, this is not the team I didn't pick to advance because I think it's a weak group. But surprises happen. So.
Okay.
That could be if Morocco turn out to actually be good, which could happen. Then that could become a thing.
Yeah.
I see goals here. The crystal ball, Larstradamus predicts goals because
Larstradamus.
Because I just think whether it's 100% or not, Alphonso Davies is a speedy guy, and you got Buchanan, who I've seen play for Club Brugge a couple of times. He can run. And you got Jonathan David, who's got a bit of turn of pace to him as well. So you've got some speedy boys. Whereas the Belgian back line famously is creaking. But on the other hand, I can't really see that Canada defense. I'm sorry, it's Kevin De Bruyne and it's all these guys.
Come on, Andy.
Can you keep a clean sheet? No. So I can imagine this being in my mind, I'm thinking 4-2 or something goofy, goofy like.
Come
this.
On, Andy. Come on, Lars. Come on, Andy. Come on, encourage him, Lars. Pick your
what?
team. Pick your team.
That Canada surprises Belgium?
Yes.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Why not? There's going to be a surprise. Argentina tied Iceland in the first game in 2018. Brazil tied Switzerland. Germany lost to Mexico. England needed a 91st minute against Tunisia. Surprises happen in the early rounds.
Saudi Arabia just beat Argentina, I heard.
What?
So
Yeah.
What a day. What a day. We still need the Messi storybook ending. I still believe it can happen.
I feel like we had a full sort of, for those of you listening who might be a little bit new to the World Cup, maybe this is your first time. This day today, I thought was like a full house of group stage World Cup because we had an upset. We had a couple of disappointing games.
Yeah,
which
a couple
sadly
of nil-nils, right?
Yeah, and then we had some real class on display from France in terms of skill towards the end. Yeah. So that was a group stage full house today.
And your Prince scored. And you're happy about that.
A lovely man.
This has been a fantastic way to end match day 2 of Qatar KickAround. Lars, thank you very much. Go get some dinner, take a nap.
Anytime.
We need you on that. We need you on that first game wall tomorrow morning, sir.
Hey, it's 10 hours and 50 minutes until we go again. So I'm gonna have a relax and then go to bed, and then off we go.
My friend Andy, thank you very much. Thank you for the trivia questions.
We are halfway through match day 1 of group play. We're just getting started.
Unbelievable. We will be back tomorrow for match day 3. And thank you for those who watched the live stream. And thank you to those who download and listen to the pod. We will speak to you tomorrow. Go on, get stuck in, and win your 50s.